at a Movement Day expression in New York, where leaders were challenged to think beyond the events that they put on, to cultivating a true heart and rhythm for serving the city, Gail Song Bantam made this powerful statement and said, reaching the marginalized shouldn't just be an initiative. It's a space that people occupy in beautiful and burdensome ways. And I think on that said, we are talking about creating a rhythm in reaching our city. Rhythms remind us of almost a picture of an orchestra. We have different gifts, different instruments, different, sounds coming out, but it's controlled by this orchestra. And I think we all know that are here today that we know who's the conductor. There's not an amen after lunch, right? So no amens after lunch. Do we do this before lunch? Okay. So what we are saying is that it's a diverse group of people, diverse skills, diverse graces. It's different approaches. There is so much that you have to consider and contemplate in creating a rhythm to reach a city. I'm going to introduce my wonderful panel here today. They are, I just want to say we get first prize for the mixed group here. And young and old. But just to say this, that Esther is one of our hub leaders for Movement Day Africa. And she has been pivotal in the advancement of the gospel across East Africa. She's also a leader with African Enterprise. And so it's so great to have you here, Esther. Next to her, we've got Anya Natsatsi, and perhaps I just want to mention this. She's here even amidst the fact that her mother-in-law has just passed away this morning. And so, Anya, our thoughts are with you. But Anya is one of those leaders in our city that really stands out as a warrior in prayer. Formerly, she's led Global Voice of Prayer across the globe and done a sterling work. And currently, she is transitioning to a new initiative which is really focusing on the next gen. And it's 2 billion children to be won for Christ. And it's a powerful initiative. So thank you, Anya, for being here. Lastly, we've got Pastor Trevor Herbert. Pastor Trevor Herbert was a businessman, but he's a pastor for many years. Pastors a very successful, very flourishing church out in Cape Town, the city where God lives. And he also is overseeing the Western Cape AFM ministry. The AFM, as you know, they have approximately 1.4 million members. And so Pastor Trevor plays a pivotal role in our city. He's the chair of organizations that we are part of, Cape Town for Jesus, the Ecumenical Network, and many others in our city. So welcome to you. I want to start with the first question, and just to, set the stage that rhythms are important for sustainability. You have to make sure that whatever we start, that we actually finish. And we love what we've heard earlier around the cross-generational, but also, how things have multiplied. To talk to that, what in your mind or in your view is cultivating a rhythm and a heart for serving a city? What does that look like different to the old traditional approach? Esther, would you like to respond?
I have had a background in music. Believe it or not, I can hold a tune once in a while. And rhythm is a very musical word because it talks about such unity. It talks about listening in. It talks about having a pattern. By the time we're talking about a rhythm, there's a sense of pattern. There's a sense of timing. And there's a sense in which everything must work in such harmony so that we could actually call it a rhythm. So what crosses my mind is that rhythm does not arrive on its own, but it's this whole collaboration of different actors all across to be able to achieve the patterns that we want to achieve in the city. So I see that we have those collaborations happening with the people, collaborations happening across industries, collaboration happening across churches, but all people involved in what we would call the ecosystem of the city must work together in tandem to be able to have a rhythm in the city.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think those are some of the key words that we hear in our talks when it comes to Movement Day. It's about partnership, collaboration, synchronizing efforts, and all these things. We believe, that we have to do it together. Anya, from your perspective, what are the specific examples around relational models that help sustain these kind of rhythms in the city?
Thanks, Pastor Steve. That's good. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. I think what's really encouraged us is just seeing the journey with leaders since 2021, especially in the prayer space in Cape Town, where we decided to come together and to spend time together, not only praying, but really getting to know one another, getting to understand our personal contexts, our families. It's really been a relational journey amongst prayer leaders across the city. 2021, that started happening monthly. By 2022, we, during Pentecost, had a gathering called Come to the Table, where we had leaders from across the city come together to collaborate. And really what made that difference was the listening aspect, not coming with agendas, but saying, what is the Lord saying to us, and how do we learn to listen together to what he's saying to us as leaders? And that has since then led to something called Hope Through Unity, which is a collaborate across the city of Cape Town, where we focus on racial reconciliation, we focus on violence against children, prioritizing and serving the poor, just many aspects, mobilizing churches in mission. So it's been really encouraging to see that journey from relational prayer all the way through to consistently meeting, listening to the Lord. And from there, it became a practical outworking in the city, which is having a significant impact currently in Cape Town. Yeah.
I must say that was a phenomenal event, and people still refer to it. But I think that as we are saying, it may start with an event, but it becomes a regular, consistent coming together and addressing those challenges that we face. Pastor Trevor, there's so many challenges in each city, and particularly in our city, in Cape Town. Some of the social ills that we have been seeing playing out, in the church, in our communities. How have we responded as a church?
Thank you, Pastor Steve. I think, firstly, allow me to say that Cape Town has been accused of being a tale of two cities. One where there's a lot of pain and suffering, and another part where there's a life of luxury being lived. And so on. The other thing that people also remark, they say Cape Town, operates in silos. But I would like to believe that precious grain is stored in silos. And these silos sometimes communicate. And this is what I think is our blessing in the city. The late Graham Power years ago brought people together across racial barriers, for many reasons. And his legacy lives on through the fact that in the rhythms of our city, you have multiple prayer groups, and hence maybe the accusation of silos. But how much prayer is enough? You see, we have also church leader-led parachurch organizations that focus on specific things. It could be evangelism, it could be drug addiction, it could be vulnerable groups like children and teenage pregnancy issues and so on. God has blessed us that all these organizations, the leaders, are in relationship. So whenever there is a need in the city, or something is a crisis that needs the church's participation, we are there quickly. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a bad time in Cape Town with taxi violence. And the church had to request involvement. And by the grace of God, people acceded to the request. And we played a role, and sometimes you can be light and you're very visible, but sometimes you are salt. So we would like to believe in the last days before the settlement, we played a role of salt. And so we thank God for that we have these groups doing their own thing, adding significant value, but appreciating the thing called rhythm. There's regular praise, there's quarterly praise, there's monthly praise, there's annual events. And that brings these people together, and they make a difference in our city, I'd like to believe.
Fantastic, absolutely. I think many of you know, were aware of the crisis that we had, and I think the challenge was that you have two different parties trying to negotiate a deal, but without, if I may say, without the mind of Christ. And so it was inevitable that it's going to continue to some degree, but you needed an intervention, and that's where the church really fulfilled a critical role. To sustain a lot of these moves and what we believe God wants us to do in our cities and in the continent, there needs to be cross-generational involvement. I believe, you have to think ahead and you have to be intentional in including different groups, but particularly the next gen. You want to speak into that?
When you started the panel, you started by saying this is the most diverse group. And we tend to talk a lot about diversity. Diversity is critical, and it's the entryway. So that, yes, we do have the old and we have the young. We have that intergenerational mix. But I believe there are two other words that we need to pay keen attention to when we're talking to the young. So we're talking about diversity, but we're also talking about inclusion. So diversity is getting the young people into the room. But inclusion means that they have space for their voice to be heard. So are we intentionally including the younger generation when it comes to missions and outreach, to evangelism, to discipleship? How are we including them in the conversation? The other word that I would want to add in there is belonging, because not just having them included, but them being owners in the room. Not just visitors on the table, but them knowing that the table belongs to them. So they sit carefully sometimes because they don't know, am I a guest? Am I needed here? Should I be told, walk out now? The adults want to talk. That's not what we need to do when it comes to intergenerational missions and collaboration. We're talking about youth, and one of the first speakers, Dr. Mark Pierre, said the average age of the youth of Africa right now, of the population, is 19 years old. So you imagine that majority of Africa is young. So the question then becomes, how do we ensure that the young Africans are in the room, diversity, are having their voice heard, inclusion, and are also belonging so that they are properly seated around the table. There are many organizations that are already doing this. We've just watched a video on the next move. I'm aware about Lausanne, which has an intentional effort to the younger leaders as well through mentorship. Mentorship is so key. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. Entrusted, and you also entrust to the next generation. So mentorship plays a critical role. We have organizations such as African Enterprise that I did mention I'm a part of, and we're doing a program called Foxfires, which is all about mentorship that is evangelism-based mentorship. What would it look like to have marketplace-based mentorship as well? I know the European Leadership Forum has something like that, and we are soon planning to do an African Leadership Forum. So what would it look like to have marketplace mentorship, having the younger generation intentionally included, intentionally belonging in the room? So that's a critical thing for us.
Fantastic. I think we know that the next generation is probably key to what we are trusting God for and believing God for our nations. All our nations, we need to include them. A last question, how do we empower them? And I think you're talking about programs, but Anya, do you want to speak into the programs that we have with the Movement Day? One of them, the Movement Day Scholars Program, just briefly, and your experience with that, and how that aids you to help maintain momentum and also continue with the rhythm.
Absolutely. I found it really helpful being part of the Scholars Program, obviously still in a journey with that, but I just really feel like it's given us a language in terms of creating models for city gospel movements, changing paradigms around women in leadership, for example, next-gen involvement in leadership, been very, very helpful to have voices like Luke Greenwood and others have access to their research and the learnings that they have to really reach the next generation, for example, in an effective and a concise and relevant way. So I think in that way, it's really a powerful tool that the church can use to come alongside what the Lord is doing. I think just a comment on Next Gen as well, is I really think we have to get beyond the point of seeing young people and children as objects of mission and see them as agents of mission that are going to help us form strategy and help spearhead the way for the fulfillment of the Great Commission. We have to bring them into our planning rooms, into our strategizing sessions, not just have them as a tag on. That, as Esther has said, I think it's essential to tap into them as the massive harvest force to reach our cities and our nations. So, yeah.
Excellent. We know that everything starts with prayer. Any move of God starts with prayer. And what we want to propose as a great rhythm is to have regular prayer. What we discovered now with the crisis in Cape Town is that we started a 6 a.m. prayer group. And in fact, we've had pastors and leaders from across the city and other nations joining us with the crisis. Whenever there's a disruption or a crisis, there's an opportunity. And so we can develop a fantastic rhythm of coming together and saying, we're going to reach our city, prayer being one. I want to suggest the second one. And the second one is being intentional in multiplying what you are doing. And perhaps the third one should be that the inclusion of marketplace leaders. Because we really believe that when you have the resourced people that are bottom line driven, they will keep you on track even in your ministry. I think that's our contribution from our side. We spared you 7 minutes.